Okay, this is going to be my second video where I'm going to show how much biology and evolution our YouTube atheists actually know.
Homologies refer to similar structures in different organisms.
Now it's very important to know that the video for which I am making this answer is called Evidence for Evolution, and evidence is the key word here.
Homologies refer to similar structures in different organisms. For instance, the forelimbed in tetrapods, which is made from the same set of skeletal bones. We have a long bone in the upper arm, then 2 bones in the lower arm, then a bunch of small bones.
Okay, before I would start, I must say that this atheist makes a confusion between homologs structures and analogs structures.
Different things. Whether it is the wing of a bat used for flying, or if it's the flipper of a whale, they all have the same bone structure as our forearm.
Homology is no evidence for evolution. Evolutionists today consider that homology strongly suggests a common descent, but nobody says it's evidence for something.
The facts of homology make sense if they are supposed to be due to evolution of now different organisms from a common stock. They do not make sense otherwise.
Dobzhansky, T. Evolution, Genetics, and Man. John Wiley & Sons, New York. Pages 227, 228, 1959.
Homology is a specific explanation of similarity of form seen in the biological world. Similarities can often be explained by common descent. Features are considered homologous if they are shown to be inherited from a common ancestor. For example, although the arms of full-limbed vertebrates externally appear quite different, all have the same basic underlying skeletal and muscular pattern. Such shared patterns are best explained by the inference that they were inherited from a common ancestor that also had this pattern. Proposed homologies are evaluated using comparative anatomy, genetics, development, and behavior.
Icons of evolution. Why much of what Jonathan Wells writes about evolution is wrong. Alan D. Gishlick, National Center for Science Education.
First, if homology is defined as similarity due to common descent, then is circular reasoning to use it as evidence for a common descent. Second, biologists have known for decades that homologous features are not due to similar genes, so the mechanism that produces them remains unknown. An neo-Darwinist who wants to determine whether vertebrate forelimbs are homologous must first determine whether they are derived from a common ancestor. In other words, there must be evidence for a common ancestry before limbs can be called homologous. But then to turn around and argue that homologous limbs point to common ancestry is a vicious circle. Common ancestry demonstrates homology, which demonstrates common ancestry.
Icons of evolution. Jonathan Wells.
However, in our post-Darwin period, biologists define a homologous structure as an anatomical, developmental, behavioral, or genetic feature shared between two different organisms because they inherited it from a common ancestor. Because not all features that are similar in two organisms are necessarily inherited from a common ancestor, and not all features inherited from a common ancestor are similar, it is necessary to test structures before they can be declared homologous.
Icons of evolution. Why much of what Jonathan Wells writes about evolution is wrong. Alan D. Gishlick, National Center for Science Education.
Often, in nature, some structures seem to be homologs, but if they cannot be explained by a common descent, they are analogs.
The arms of birds and bats would be considered homologs, because they have the same structure and position in both animals. Their wings, however, are analogues. Both wings have the same function, flight, yet the bird's wing is made of feathers, and the bat's is made of skin. They are different structures.
Icons of evolution. Why much of what Jonathan Wells writes about evolution is wrong. Alan D. Gishlick, National Center for Science Education.
The wings example is very good because it is believed that wings have evolved around 4 times in insects, birds, bats, and in some reptiles such as the pterodactyl. So even if the wings they seem very similar, I don't think you're going to find too many evolutionists to claim that insects evolve into birds who evolve into bats. At least I hope not. Another good example is the eye, because it is believed that eyes evolve around 60 different times, with no connection one with the other. And still, most of the eyes look very similar. The eye of an octopus and the eye of a human are very similar. Still, nobody is crazy enough to say that one evolved into another.
Homologies refer to similar structures in different organisms.
No, it doesn't, and I'm not going to help you there, zombie girl.
Homologies refer to similar structures in different organisms.
Homology is not proved for evolution, because for a structure to could be called homologous, it must be proven that that structure is the result of a common descent. So basically, you need evolution to could prove common descent to could prove homology.
Homologies refer to similar structures in different organisms.
Now, here is how I understand homology in evolution. Now, you must do a comparative anatomy, you must prove a common descent, you must prove that those structures develop from similar genes, and that they have the same behavior. Because if you not do all that, you could probably say that the breasts from men and female are homologous. The big problem of homology in evolution is that similar structures who seem homologous do not develop from the same structure or group of embryo cells. So some structures who today are considered homologous, after future studies we could discover they are in fact analogues.
Even the classic example of vertebrate forelimbs referred to by Darwin and cited in hundreds of textbooks as proof for evolution has now turned out to be flawed as an example of homology. The reason is that the forelimbs often develop from different body segments in different species in a pattern that cannot be explained by evolution. The forelimbs in the newt develop from trunk segments 2 through 5, in the lizard they develop from trunk segments 6 to 9, in humans they develop from trunk segments 13 through 18.32. Denton concluded that this evidence shows the forelimbs usually are not developmentally homologous at all. As an example, he cited the development of the vertebrate kidney, which provides a challenge to the assumption that homologous organs are produced from homologous embryonic tissues. Michael Denton concluded that the homology theory should be rejected. His main argument is that genetic research has not shown that homologous structures are produced by homologous genes and follow homologous patterns of embryological development. Instead, genetics has found that homologous structures are often specified by non-homologous genetic systems, and furthermore, the homology can seldom be extended back into embryology.
TJ Now, Journal of Creation, 15/1/2633, April 2001, by Jerry Bergman.
So the conclusion is that homology is not a proof for evolution. Still, some people will try to prove evolution using homology. Basically, they're going to choose some animals who it is believed they have a common descent, and they're going to pick and choose some structures who seem similar. The problem is that those structures should also be tested if they develop from the same kind of genes, from the same kind of embryonic cells, and so on. So basically the homology argument is not so easy like some YouTube atheists would like you to think it is.
Homologies refer to similar structures in different organisms. For instance, the forelimb in tetrapods, which is made from the same set of skeletal bones. We have a long bone in the upper arm, then 2 bones in the lower arm, then a bunch of small bones in the wrist, and then a set of 5 digits. And if you look at any other tetrapod, even if their forelimb is used for different things, whether it is the wing of a bat used for flying, or if it's the flipper of a whale, they all have the same bone structure as our forearm. And some of those animals lose some of their digits in various stages of development, like we can see in birds. This would make no sense unless you consider a common ancestor.
Finally, so it points to a common ancestor. So why did you put all this shit in a video called Evidence for Evolution? So basically what Christina did, she chose what was supporting her atheistic views. For example, for the 4 limbs, she chose the 5 digits, and she ignored all the other aspects.